let's go ahead and dig into a bit of a bigger picture topic, and that is the SEC East is starting to take shape. Carson Beck named the starter at Georgia. Graham Mertz named the starter at Florida. Missouri will play both Brady Cook and Sam Horn. You have the Vols, who, as we discussed, their quarterback situation is pretty set. Of this group that I just mentioned of SEC East teams, which of these starters named should Tennessee take the most interest in? I would think Carson Beck was a known commodity. Missouri, crazy time. They're going to play two guys, which I think is goofy. And then eventually, I would think they would settle on one by the time the Tennessee game rolls around. To me, I think it's Graham Mertz. I think that's the one you take note of. And I talked to Jacob Warren on the Vol Report that'll be up. They're not even planning for Virginia yet, so they're not planning for any of these teams. But now that I know it's Graham Mertz, in coaches' meetings, I'm thinking about Graham Mertz a little bit. What do you make of these three starters, and which one affects Tennessee the most now that we know who it is?
Well, I can tell you that Florida starting Graham Mertz benefits Tennessee the most. I'm not as low on Graham Mertz as John Adams is because he said he might be the worst quarterback in the SEC East. I don't think he's a bad one, but Dave, Graham Mertz's style, Tennessee's defense has some weaknesses. Graham Mertz's style makes him unable to expose those because you and I know Tim Banks is all about pressure. He's all about pressure and dialing up different stunts and blitz packages with elite edge rushers and the linebackers in the middle. Graham Mertz is a quarterback out of 1992. He is a drop back statue. I think Casey Clausen is faster than Graham Mertz, honestly. And he is, yes, he is a drop back passer who cannot move at all in the pocket. If you're going to torch Tennessee secondary, you got to be able to move in the pocket, right? You got to be fast. You got to be athletic as a quarterback. You got to be like Spencer Rattler, Bryce Young. I mean, you got to have some fluidness in the pocket. Mertz has none. Tennessee is going to sack him 17 times in that game. Tyler Barron may turn into Bobby Boucher in that game. I mean,
the Mertz thing to me, it seems like a disaster waiting to happen. Maybe he goes back there and he's just a caretaker of the offense and the distributor. You mentioned Clausen a couple of years after him. It was Rick Clausen, his brother, who probably would have been well suited for that, but Philip Fulmer fell in love with the talent of Eric Ainge. So Mertz may be able to do that. I mean, what's the best case scenario for Mertz? Is that he's a caretaker that doesn't make a lot of big plays on his own? I'm not even talking about legs. I'm talking about arm strength, ability. I don't think he scares you going into any game at all. Please play devil's advocate, Caleb, for a second, and tell me why the Vols should be afraid of Graham Mertz.
So the Vols should be afraid of Graham Mertz if they don't get what they need at. I can't play devil's advocate because what Florida wants
you almost, no offense, but you almost sounded stupid just saying it. And I ask you to.
Exactly. I know. I'm trying to think because Florida wants to ground and pound. They want to do like the old Rex Ryan New York Jets system. You know what I mean? They want to run the ball. They do have good running backs on the team, so they want to run the ball a lot. Fine, that's great. This is like they're building like a Nick Saban team in 2012. But Dave, to be a Nick Saban team in 2012. You have to have the best offensive line in the history of man. Does Florida have the best offensive line in the history of man?
Okay, no. So I asked you to do this, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to play devil's advocate. Graham Mertz will be a game manager. He will, I don't believe really any of this. Just want everybody to know. Graham Mertz will be a game manager. He will have some drawn out drives against Tennessee, 6-7 minute drives. He won't make mistakes, and the drawn-out drives will keep Tennessee's offense out of a flow and not able to take advantage of their up-tempo style. That's the best I can do it. That's the best I can do.
He won't be able to milk the clock because they won't move the ball. I don't know where you land on this, but here's the thing. Defensive line is literally Tennessee's biggest strength on defense. So, and
I tried.
unless Florida has like Alabama level offensive linemen from 2012, that's the only way you could have a drop back passer who's a game manager at quarterback, isn't it? By the way, he had that at Wisconsin. As you and I know, Wisconsin churns out NFL linemen like no other program in the country. I mean, they're the best offensive line program in the country. He's not getting that at Florida.
And the Carson Beck thing, that was expected. It would have been news had he not been the starter, right?
It would have. To me, that I saw a little bit on the message board, and I wanted to mention this. I think Carson Beck should scare Tennessee. I think his offensive coach should not. Mike Bobo, if Dowell Logans wasn't in the SEC, Mike Bobo might be the worst offensive coordinator in the SEC.
Yeah, Carson Beck, listen, if he has the clutch gene of Stetson Bennett, then, and I know Stetson had his limitations, but he turned himself into a fantastic quarterback. Wouldn't you agree? If he has the clutch gene of Stetson Bennett, then that's 1 in a million. When is the last time Tennessee has had two incredibly or any program has two incredibly clutch quarterbacks back to back? I thought Casey Clausen was very clutch.
T. Martin and Casey Clausen were both clutch, and they were back to back.
I would take those back to back, but when else? Peyton Manning didn't beat Florida, made some mistakes.
He was clutch. I am pushing back. Peyton Manning was clutch. Put on that SEC championship game.
No. I agree. In '97, the SEC championship game. But I could at least make the argument that he got tied against Florida, right?
I think I wouldn't say Peyton did. I'd say the coaches did.
And the entire team.
Yeah, Peyton had, let's not forget this. Peyton put up 36 points in 1995 against Florida. It's not his fault John Chavis gave up 62. And
I'm with you. I thought, I do think there were times, though, was it perhaps, I'm trying to remember the year that he looked.
96, you can blame him. That was that meltdown where they had like 4 turnovers and fell behind 35-0 in the first 20 minutes. Remember that one?
Yeah, I do remember that.
You can blame Peyton for that because he made a lot of mistakes in those first 20 minutes. But I don't blame him for 97. That was the worst. Tennessee had a brand new offensive line. They hadn't found their running game yet. So Peyton Manning was under duress the whole game. If you go back and watch, Peyton Manning had less than 2 seconds to throw the ball every time he dropped back. I don't blame him for 95. He put up 36 points against the Bob Stoops defense. It's not his fault that Florida scored 62. I'll blame him for 96. It's the only one I'll blame him for is the 96 loss to Florida.
Speaking of quarterbacks, it was Joe Milton says he was asked about the Orange Bowl. He said, I just don't lose in Florida. Zachary pointed that out. And then in response, Rocky Top Tom said, I wish Joe hadn't said that. It might come back to bite him in the arse. It might. I wonder if he could take that back, if Joe Milton would take that back.
It depends. It depends on how mentally tough Tennessee and Florida are. I've watched games. I will never forget this. Rasheed Wallace. Remember this? When the Pistons were playing the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Rasheed Wallace is like, Indiana's not winning game 2. Guarantee it. Reggie Miller choked in game 2. And then Indiana wins game 3, and she goes, we got to make sure we go back with the series tied at 2. So we're going to do that. We're definitely going back series tied. Don't worry. We'll get game 4. Indiana choked again. So maybe Joe saying that is going to get Florida to choke because they're going to be a little nervous.